Welcome to this micro course, providing you with best practice skills and know-how. This session is given to you by the Van Haren Group, your partner to enable best practice learning. With your host, Maurits van der Plas.
Hello, welcome everybody to this micro course, leveraging experience management and XLAs. I'm here with Ellen Nance. Hi, Ellen. Thank you for being here.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. So for those who don't know what XLAs are, you're going to learn all about it today. So we as Van Haren have been active in ITIL from the beginning. And therefore we also want to invest and be a part of the development of service management. While Alan Nance is the guy to talk to. So he's been involved with ITIL from the beginning, was the keynote speaker at the launch in 1992. That's when I was born, by the way. Sorry, I had to make that joke. But Alan is also looking at the future. So he's been talking about XLA for the last 5 years. I only learned about it for the last 2 years. Yet I think there's many people that have not learned about it. So Alan is going to tell us more about it today. What really intrigued me is the service economy. He might tell you more about it in this session. If you have questions or comments, feel free to ask them in the chat. I will bring them up whenever, when it suits in the conversation. So we as Van Haren offer several products in XLA. XLA is being hosted and managed by the XLA Institute. If you want more information, feel free to reach out to us or reach out to the XLA Institute. Alan is also a part of the XLA Institute and happy to tell you more about it now. I would say take it away, Alan.
Cool. Well, thank you everybody for making time today, wherever you are in the world. It's always great to talk to people who are interested in experience management. It's a rapidly growing movement, thanks to the certified training that we do with Van Haren. And what we're seeing is a huge uptake on this. So today it's going to be a little basic. So some of you may think, oh, I've heard this before, but we really want to get across today are the core ideas behind experience management, and particularly how it differs from service management. Because we know a lot of people have been expert in service management for some time, and sometimes we get confusion around that. So let me just kick off straight into the slides. What we're going to talk about today is what is experience, and just what Maurits said, what is this experience economy? And what everybody's always asked me, what is an XLA? And we're also going to look at why experience is important, the frameworks that you can deploy, and what we've learned over the past 5 years. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments, and if they're very urgent, then we'll come back to them now, and otherwise at the end. So really the human experience is summed up in this phrase and this picture. People will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And this is really important because this one statement is the difference between service and experience management. Service management is all about doing what you say, saying what you do, and being measured on it. But there's very few elements of service management that really focuses on how people feel, why they feel that way, and what we need to change. Now, I would add from my own experience is that it's not just how you made them feel at the time, but it's how they remember an experience. And Joe Pine, who's the founder of the experience movement, he says memories are the hallmark of experience. And this is important because how people remember an event, if it gives them a warm and fuzzy feeling, or it gives them a chill down their spine, that is really the hallmark of the experience. And what we need to understand, even up front, is that is not always reality. And we'll come back to that in a second when we talk about how we measure XLAs. But I'll give you a quick example of that. If you ask my daughter how she learned to ride a bike, she will tell you that, I helped her. We went out on the street. It was a sunny day. She fell off a couple of times, but at the end of the day, she knew how to ride a bike. It's all very vivid in her mind. There's one problem with that, is that when my daughter learned to ride her bike, I wasn't even in the country. And so this story, as my daughter tells it, really annoys one person in our family, and that's my wife, who was the person who actually spent time teaching my daughter. But this is an indication of why we can't always trust memories, but memories are very, very strong in telling us how we felt about an interaction. Now, we talk about the experience economy, and the reason we want to talk about this is to understand that XLAs and experience management are not coming out of nowhere. They're not a fad. They're not a new technology invention like AI or SaaS or something like that. It's the evolution of 200 years of the economies that most of us live in. Most of us started off, or not us, but our generations before, in commodity business. People would go to faraway places and they would bring back coffee and spices and gold and whatever. And those commodities would be traded. That was the beginning of the stock exchange. As we went through, we started to get into the manufacturing economy. Things became productized. Steam engines became part of machines. Coffee became part of a coffee product and was sold in the supermarkets. And then after the product, we started to get the service. And the service in the early days were coffee shops, very basic coffee shops. Some of you might remember when coffee did not cost an exorbitant amount of money. And so the service was really, you're not making the coffee yourself, you're not buying the product yourself, you're just turning up and you're consuming it. Then around 2003, we moved to the experience economy. And the experience economy it's not just about coffee, it's about being somewhere that gives you good vibes. So Starbucks is probably the most important global pioneer. I know there are others. You've got Costa and you've got Joe and the Juice and others. But really, Starbucks stands out as the company that wanted to give you an experience. They wanted to give you a comfy chair. They wanted to give you a place that you could work while you were consuming the coffee. And because of that, you were prepared to pay a much, much greater amount of money. So you see...
Sorry to interrupt, but I think you have a slide with this one, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Oh, is it not sharing?
I think it's we still have the main slide to start off.
Oh, sorry. I thought it was sharing. Oh, is it sharing now?
It shows the slide, the main slide, the starting slide is now on, and I see the PowerPoint around.
It's sharing this window.
Oh yeah, it's sharing the window, but it's still the first slide. Is that correct?
No, it should be on slide 4 now.
Oh yeah, this is it. Now it's there. Perfect. I was already thinking. I think there's a... All right.
Well, what I'll do is I'll just do it with this one here.
Yeah, perfect. This is good to... yeah.
So the slide that you missed, was this one, which is the slide I just covered about memories. And then I'll move to this one. Can you see this one? Now the journey of coffee?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Thanks.
Right. So this is the evolution. And what we understand is that as we move through these phases, the way the economy gets managed is different. So if you grew up in the service economy, certainly like I did, you needed all sorts of methods and techniques to manage service. And that's where our service level management comes from. The idea that service needs to be managed, service is contracted, services are outsourced, are all ingrained in that service economy. But it's also clear as we move to the experience economy that we need different tactics, different methods, different skills. And even within IT, many of our audience today come out of the IT experience. And we have the same thing. I remember the time that people were building their own laptops. They were building their own mini computers. And then, of course, they became productized and you just bought a laptop. Now you have in many larger organizations, you have IT as a service. You just get a laptop with all the support, the desk side support, the help desk support, the software upgrades. You get that all as a service. And now we're looking at IT as an experience with XLAs. So we're seeing the same evolution And that's one of the core learnings, is this is not something you can not be part of. This is how the economy is going. This is how our culture is going. And this is how you have to respond to that if you're going to be successful. So what is experience? Experience is simply how someone feels or how they remember how they felt. But defining experience is the balance of positive, negative interactions that your customers have with you over time. Experience is the sum of how people feel about you and what you're doing. It's about emotions, feelings, as well as cognitive thoughts during all the stages of their engagement with you. And most importantly, experience is cumulative. It's not the single transaction that we love in IT to measure. It is the cumulative experience over time that is determining the longevity of the relationship that you have with your customer. Which means we have to move from transactions. So calling the service desk to report an outage is a transaction. Going to a portal to request a password change is a transaction. But what we're more interested in is a series of calls to the service desk, an outage from start to finish. And these transactions shape experience, but it's the multiple moments over time that are the experience. Now, when you appreciate moments over time, I'm going to show you. I don't know if this isn't building up as it normally should because of this sharing issue. But let's imagine we're going to go to a restaurant, and let's just take this through the eyes of a Gen Z customer. When we go to the restaurant, we start with, how are we going to a restaurant? Now, Gen Z doesn't do what I normally do, which is walk down the street, have a look through the window at the menu and decide that looks okay. Gen Z tends to know well in advance where it's going to go. And it does that through recommendations, whether they come through friends, influencers on TikTok or Yelp. They will have an expectation before they go to this restaurant. And the next phase is the ambience of the restaurant. Even if it's the best restaurant in the world, according to an influencer, if it's empty, we're not going inside. The best ambience to start with for Gen Z is a 15 to 20 minute wait time, preferably with an SMS callback, so they know that this is the right choice that they've made. And then you go in, and of course you're expecting the ambience should be good. So it has to be either warm or cold, modern, or artsy, depending on what the expectation is. The next thing is, how do the wait staff treat you? Now, this is very culturally dependent. In the United States, where I am, we expect a waiter to come within a minute or two. They're going to put down water. They're going to introduce themselves. They're going to give you the menus. I know in other countries, you may have to wait and shout a little bit to get that, but the wait staff is the next indication of, are we in the right place? The next one is the menu. And again, Gen Z is very different to my generation. They don't read the menu because they've already read the menu online. They've already decided what they want. And especially if they are vegetarian or vegan and they've put their money on a specific menu item, if it's not available, they will get up and leave. The next one is the back of house. What does the kitchen look like? Preferably, we want to have a kitchen here that's open. We can see people working away. We can see the food being freshly cooked. Then we have the meal itself. Obviously, that has to be good. That has to be an Instagrammable moment, and that's usually what it is. It has to be something we share, because generally, whether it's communal or not, Gen Z will taste each other's food. And then we have the amenities. Hopefully, your amenities are also Instagrammable, in as much as they've got some special art in them or they're special designs that makes them attractive. Now, we've gone through all of that. We get to the moment that we have to pay the bill. The bill is the first moment that we all decide, was this worth it? Was this a good money value of our time? Now, once we pass that, and this is the important thing, the moment that this memory starts to be sealed is the moment of departure. When people walk out of that restaurant, what they say to each other effectively will seal the memory of this. If they're walking out of that restaurant and they're saying, oh my goodness, that waiter was so amazing, or she was so helpful, I can't believe they had truffles on the menu, I can't believe the way that bathroom, light turns on or off. If they walk out of that and they feel that was a tremendous experience, it's not down to any one of the transactions that we do. It's down to the cumulative moments over time and how people remember them. So that gives us 2 moments of measurement. One, which is the bottom layer, which is performance. Every decent restaurant will have SLAs for all of these moments of interaction. They will have one that says, how long should it take before a waiter visits you? How long should it take before your food is ready? How often should the bathrooms be clean? They will have all those things. And all of those things will ensure that they're doing they're doing what they said they would do, and they're doing it well. That's the service management aspect of performance. But on top of that is the experience. Are we doing what matters? And will people remember this experience as pleasurable? So that's the essence of why we appreciate moments over time. And hopefully you can see the difference between transactions and looking at the moments over time. And you're going to measure them differently. And that's the important thing. So what is an XLA then? Because if SLAs are a measure of outputs, what you need to do and how well you do it, an XLA is a measure of outcomes, a measure of your experience ambition. And it's often a joint commitment with your customer almost. You have to have shared expectations on what this experience is going to be. Now, what I also want to say is an XLA is not a touchy-feely kumbaya type of thing. It's a scientific measure of how your customers feel about what you're doing and why it matters. So in order to measure experience, we need to ask people, how do you feel? How do you feel about this? This tells us what people feel, but we need to understand why they feel that way. And remember that when we're using XLAs, this is not psychology, it's cultural anthropology, because we're looking at scale. An XLA has to be useful to a business. An XLA has to be useful to an organization. So we're not interested in what Maurice thinks, but we're interested in what everybody like Maurice thinks and why they feel that way. So in order to do that, we need to combine the experience data with the service level agreement data, which is operational data, and the technical measures, which we call T data, technical data, to give us a more rounded indication of feelings. So here you see an overview, I don't want to go through all of this, of what's the difference between an XLA and an SLA. And I still read things that people say, well, you can incorporate an XLA into an SLA. You really can't, and there's a number of reasons why you can't. One is that an SLA is a static indicator. Most SLAs in use today have been unchanged for over 20 years. Now, that means that the SLAs that you're using today, that your outsourcer is using today, were created back in 2000, 2005, before the iPhone, before the App Store, before ubiquitous internet, and before you knew exactly what you wanted in life. Also, experience changes. It's subject to the gravity to average, which means even if I give you an amazing experience tomorrow, the more you get used to that experience, the less you will value it. Whereas SLAs, as long as the machines and everything work as designed, that never changes. So an SLA is not enough. You can't get to an XLA from an SLA, but you do need an SLA in order to feed the XLA. So what does it look like? So here we see an example of an XLA stack where we're looking at IT services that enable employees to perform. And we'll see that we start with the sentiment question. Was the last interaction with the service desk a good use of your time? Now, what we know from this is if the answer is yes, nothing else matters. It doesn't matter how long they waited before the phone was answered. It doesn't matter how many people were involved in solving it or how long it took. If the answer to that is yes, we are good. Now, if the answer to that is no, we need to delve into it. And you see this on the left-hand side. We'll look at the operational data around the service desk team, and then we'll look at the technical data. And then we'll look at the technical data in terms of the mean time to respond, first call resolution, and things like that. And how we do that is what you see in the Sankey diagram on the right. So this is an example. We look at all of the technical indicators, we map them to the operational indicators, and we map them to the questions that we are asking. So that, in a nutshell, is how we create the XLAs and what they look like. Which is, again, to reinforce that if you have grown up in service management, everything you've ever learned is still useful. It's still, we're not throwing anything away. We're just building on all the stuff that you already know. So experience management is important. I'm just going to drive through this. It shapes people's opinions, decisions, and actions. People vote on with their feet or their wallets based on how they feel about you. So it has consequences. And we see, and you can read all those yourself, there's lots of evidence that people, customers, suppliers that enjoy working with you, that have a good, valuable experience working with you, will stay working with you. So how do we do it? So we have a couple of frameworks that are useful that we've built up over time. Here's one of them, which is the experience management framework. So we look at the business that we're trying to impact. What is the outcome that the business needs? And how does that relate to the experience outcomes that we need to generate? From those experience outcomes, we generate the ambition. What is it we want to achieve? We want, like, every time somebody comes to us and they have to make a choice, we want them 90% of the time to choose this. Then we look at how we support that with the experience indicators, operation indicators, and technical indicators, and that's what we measure on a continuous basis. We also have the experience optimization framework, which is how do you start? And when we say, so it's basically a 6-step approach. We start with enlightening people. Who is in your ecosystem? Who do we need to get up to speed on what experience is? Combine what you know well with what others know differently. Are you already doing something with UX? Are you already doing something with CX? Understand why this is important to your organization. What will go better if you do this well? What will happen if you don't address this? And then we get into the exploration phase. And for each of these, we have lots of methods and techniques that you can use to start to understand your environment. So what is the experience now? What capabilities and resources do we have? Are we ready to think about XLAs? And then we have the vision, which is basically what are the types of XLAs we'd like to do? What are the experiences that we want to deliver? And then from this, we go into enable. How will you ask people how they feel? How are you going to build the XLA stack? And how are you going to source the operational data and technical data? And then we have the execution. And most importantly here is the concept of an experience management organization. So many organizations like Unisys, like T-Mobile, like BT are building their experience management organizations today. And it's important to understand what type of skills do I need? What type of tools do I need? Who is going to do what exactly? And how are they going to do it? And then lastly, we have the embrace, which is the expansion of this, the governance, the improvements, and the innovation. This is a continual cycle for the major reason that people are fickle. You know, Sammy Callio of Happy Signals says that people are self-programming sensors, and that makes them volatile. So you have to stay connected with their interpretation of experience as it changes. So what we'd like you to do is we want you to think about this. Do you want to have the experience that your customers, suppliers, and employees are going through, do you want to let it happen by accident? Do you want to depend on the best HR person? Do you want to depend on a customer being tolerant? Do you want to depend on fixing things rather than being ahead of them? If you don't, then you need to start thinking about, how do I design an experience, and how can I make that experience happen? And how can I make sure that experience delivers on the brand promise that I have? So that is, in a nutshell, what experience is, why it's important. And the most important things, I think, for us is that you think about experience in your own context. Think about whether this is a journey that you would like to consider, and then contact us. I missed one slide. And then contact us to move forward. What have we learned since 2020? I'll go with this. There is a need for a global standard, and we are working on an ISO standard to get terms and conditions across the organization. Secondly, experience is a metric and a mindset. Thirdly, there are different types of XLAs. There are provider XLAs, supplier XLAs, and even temporary XLAs for mergers and acquisitions. Experience management is a maturity journey. You're going to start before you can scale, before you can succeed. And you've got to go into that with a learning mindset, an open mindset, that it's a journey to maturity. And when we look at this, we're looking at intrinsic and extrinsic values. So what's important to the players, to the audience, but what's important to the business? And I keep saying this, XLAs are about driving better business outcomes through by satisfying the intrinsic needs of the audience. An experience management organization is probably as crucial as an XLA. So just having an XLA without having a way to measure it, to improve it, to understand it, is probably not going to give you the benefit that you deserve. Experience management is so much more about improving experience than measuring it. It's not about a survey. It's about really committing to delivering an experience to an audience that they value and making sure that that experience over time evolves in ways that the audience appreciates. So now I am finished. I want to thank you, and I'll turn it back over to you, Maurice.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Alan. So we got some questions. So let's start with thank you also for elaborating. I really enjoyed it. Also the service thinking. I'm not generation Z. I believe I'm, what is it?
Millennial. I think you're a millennial.
A millennial indeed, sorry. Indeed, millennial. I know we're also difficult, but luckily we're not that difficult. So I got this question from Kees Barneveld. Kees is an experienced service management trainer. And he asks, does experience accumulate credits for you?
So I'm assuming, Kees, that you are referring to an outsourcing agreement where you have credits and debits, or what do you mean by credits?
So I think that this question came in when you were explaining the service culture and experience culture. So yeah, if I interpret the question, and please, Kees, correct us if we interpreted it incorrectly. Yeah, or he means it as a loyalty perspective, or yes, from a then I guess it counts, right? That's also probably.
So let me give you two answers, Kees, and if I'm wrong, jump in. So one thing what we see is that we always say you only get one chance for your first impression, and that's true. But in a service industry, like many of you will be, that is not true. So when you have an established relationship, so for instance, if you're an Apple user, your relationship with Apple is much more than any specific iPhone. You are going to buy the next iPhone. I can tell you that right now. Even if that new iPhone is much inferior to a Samsung, you're still going to buy that iPhone because you're in that ecosystem. So if Apple screws up, if Apple comes out with an iPhone that's less amazing than what you expect, you're not going to suddenly drop Apple. That's not going to happen. So in that sense, experience accumulates credits for you. In the same way that if you've helped, I used to work for ING, you may know, as chief of technology staff, and my chief of technology was dedicated to EMC. Why? Because at 9/11, EMC made sure that his bank recovered as quickly as possible. That experience dictated his relationship with EMC forever.
Yeah.
Forever. So yes, in that respect, experience accumulates credits for you.
Yeah, thank you. Then this answer, I'm not sure if it will also show who asked the question, but it's, it sadly doesn't due to privacy settings, but it's a question from Roman Juravlo, the ITIL senior architect of XLAs.
Yeah.
And Romanov asked these internal standards, cleaning time to attend a guest, cooking time, why do you call them SLAs? Who are the parties of those agreements?
So it depends on the environment that we're in, right? So SLAs, oftentimes when we're talking to a commercial audience, they're in your terms and conditions. They're not always things you have to agree to, right? And basically you're correct, Roman, in as much as perhaps more technically correct, you would say these are operating level agreements that are between the company and the staff and the audience. And a lot of these are, if you're in a restaurant, they're expectations, they're market expectations. And you've decided by entering into that market that you're going to do this. If you're a McDonald's, you have a completely different set of expectations that you're going to meet with a customer than if you're with a Michelin 5-star restaurant. People are expecting different things. So the parties to these agreements are always the audience and always the provider. Whether the audience has signed up for it implicitly, explicitly or not, doesn't matter. Just like it doesn't matter in a business. Nobody in the business feels they've signed up to an SLA. But they will tell you when they're not happy. And they'll tell you, and we know all about watermelon metrics, that even if they've signed up for a certain set of KPIs around an OLA, around an SLA, if they're unhappy, the watermelon metric kicks in and the SLA doesn't matter.
Yeah, thank you. We got some thought leaders asking questions today. So here we got Wim Hoving. He's the creator of the integrated service management model of ISM.
Yeah.
SLAs are abused, but why is it forbidden to have dynamic SLAs?
I don't think it's forbidden. I don't think anybody ever said, Wim, I've known you for probably 30 years now. And when we started out with service level management, I don't think we ever said it shouldn't be dynamic. In fact, I think in the earliest service level management books, it was talking about annual renewals, but that's not what's happened. And the reason it's not what's happened is outsourcing more than anything else. Because once ISG, or as TPI as they were called, when TPI started to advise customers and suppliers, MSPs and GSIs, they came up with standard SLAs that everybody had to meet in order to justify their price. And so the customer didn't come up with those SLAs, they imported those SLAs. And as MSPs and GSIs have gone around the world, they've implemented these all over the place. Now, so if you're a major GSI, if you're DXC, you're Kyndryl, you're TCS, your back office depends on having fixed, predictable service levels. So there's no reason whatsoever that we shouldn't have dynamic SLAs. And I'm a big fan of ISM, and I do believe there's a better way of doing service management than we do it today. But how we do it and how we should do it is different. But to your point, there's no reason whatsoever not to have dynamic SLAs. In fact, because the average life cycle of an XLA is about 18 months, that may lead to more dynamic SLAs in principle, because you're going to have to look at the operational and technical data changing in some cases to support new XLAs. I hope that helps.
Yeah, thank you. Then we got two more questions. I think it's also good to closing up. And the questions are also going, we went from in-depth questions to more starting questions, which is a great finishing. So if you were starting the XLA journey, is it better to focus on the large populations experienced, the most needed population, or the most cooperative population?
So this is a really, really difficult question to answer because it is so culturally specific. But what I would tell you, and this is from the learnings at BT. BT went to the easiest way, the most cooperative population. And I think they would tell you that didn't work best for them. So that says that's probably not, it may be fun for you to learn with somebody, but it's not going to give you a business outcome and people aren't necessarily going to be committed to it. So that leaves the other two, the most needy population or the largest population. Now, there's two different views to that. It depends on the business outcome. So, for instance, if I look at what T-Mobile is doing around Teams, they're looking at a very large population, but a very small scope. That works fine. My goal would be to look at the most important population for the business outcome. So the reason that, for instance, as I've understood it, the reason that T-Mobile are focusing on Teams is because it's a major strategic initiative for the company, and it's a major productivity initiative. So it makes a lot of sense to focus on that as the biggest audience. And I think the most needy is almost like an emotional qualification. You know, you're so needy. When we say that in America, that's not necessarily a positive thing. But for instance, I'll tell you this: if you are working in an investment bank, your trading desk are the most needy population, and it probably is advisable to work on them first. So, Daniel, I'm giving you a useless answer. Like,
I think
I'm doing McKinsey now. You must figure out that first.
I think his question is very operational. I'm quite sure he has a live case that needs to be solved there.
But Daniel, we
Yeah,
can
yeah.
also take this offline if we want to go into it more deeper. But the answer is it's cultural, but the real thing is focus on the most important business outcome, most important business audience.
Yeah, thank you. Then Rocky McGuire. I think there's a few
I'm a great
persons.
fan of XLAs. Rocky, good to see you this morning.
So he asks us, what is the biggest pitfall or things organizations get wrong when looking at XLAs?
Well, I'm sure you can answer this better than I can, Rocky, with the experience that you have at Unisys. But when I look at it, I think it's around scoping and old behaviors being brought into new methods. So we have a long-standing tradition, because of our technical backgrounds in IT, of thinking inside out, of thinking we understand what's best for the customer. And when we bring that same mentality to XLAs, we almost destroy the whole cultural idea behind XLAs. Now, it's important to say this is not just IT, because some time ago on XLA TV, I spoke to one of the biggest employee experience specialists in Asia. And she was telling me that she had like 5 or 6 clients, and they were doing journey maps for onboarding of employees. So this is not IT. And when she asked them, well, where did you get the information? The answer was, we brainstormed it internally. We looked at the process we have today, and we decided what we didn't like, and we went to change it. If we do that same thing with XLAs, they're not going to work. So I think that's the biggest pitfall, is to really embrace outside in. And I really think understanding the experience as it's perceived and remembered is crucial. And don't just go straight to the O data, the T data, and just getting any type of XLA that we think we can sell. Rocky, I'd be interested to see if you think differently.
So Rocky did answer on the question from Daniel before. So Daniel asked whether you start with your experience journey, and Rocky gave some insights what he thinks where to start from, and also the specific case from a banking perspective. So they're continuing on the chat, which is great to see. So, well, I think thank you very much, Alan, for this elaboration. I also very much like this interaction in the questions and in the chat. I think it was a good start, 30 minutes, a very brief time to elaborate experience management, experience thinking, experience management, and XLAs. But thank you for your time and looking forward how this is developing towards the future. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Moritz. Thank you, everybody, for turning up. Some of you, it was very early. Some of you, it was very late. It's always exciting. And welcome to the movement. If you're not already in the movement, then please sign up at XLA Institute. Please follow some of the courses we have, whether it's the Essentials or the Foundation, and help us move this forward, because your audience deserves it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Okay, goodbye. Thank you.
Cheerio.
We at the Van Haren Group believe that organizations can benefit from shared knowledge and experiences, and we try to help them to do so. We are an independent, worldwide recognized content provider in management best practices and standards, well known for its flexibility and years of experience. Our education partners offer specialized training using our books, courseware, e-learnings, and exams. These partners play a crucial role in delivering high-quality education to professionals, leveraging our products to ensure comprehensive and effective learning experiences. At Van Haren Group, we're more than just a publisher. Our unwavering commitment to quality, passion, trust, fairness, and forward-thinking drives everything we do. We are dedicated to empowering professionals and organizations worldwide to achieve their goals and thrive in today's dynamic landscape. Dream, learn, and achieve with Van Haren Group.
Do you want to apply a best practice yourself and maybe leverage our services? Do get in contact with us. We are more than happy to advise how to take the next step.